the one thing I'll forever remember about Marc Edwards, we played Florida State, game of the century, number 1 versus number 2. We beat Florida State. We're riding high. We got the number 1 up on Grace Hall. The campus is a buzz. We're just a shoe-in to win the national championship. We're going to end up playing Nebraska or maybe a rematch with Florida State in the Orange Bowl, and all this stuff is going on, and we come in, we get snake bitten by Boston College. And the one thing I'll forever remember about Marc Edwards is that after that game, obviously everybody was just completely devastated, and tears, and everybody's really upset. And I remember Marc Edwards coming up to me just sobbing, and at the time I think he was a sophomore, and I just remember him coming up to me and saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry we didn't do it for you guys. And that, to me, at that moment, I realized, I always knew he was a class guy, but he got it. You know what I mean? He understood that although he was a part of the team, that it was about the seniors, and the seniors were the ones that were the leaders on the team. The seniors were the ones that were taking the team forward. And I just looked at him, I hugged him, I said, hey, man, it's no problem. You played your hardest. You did the best that you could possibly do. It was just incredible. So I will forever remember that about him. And just a class guy. So good to hear your voice, brother. I tell you what, it's been way too long. You got a ton of fans out there who love you and appreciate everything you did for Notre Dame and everything you did in the pros. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and what keeps you busy? I know you're a family man. Tell us a little bit about what's keeping Marc Edwards busy these days.
Yeah, most of it, you hit the nail right on the head. Most of it is chasing the kids around the soccer field. So it's all about them now. Their school, their sporting lives, their social lives. It's all about them. And my wife and I are just, actually a free taxi service for them. So we're trying to get them around and all that. But I started a new career probably about 3 years ago now. I'm a partner with a company called Speed Shield. We actually have a safety and efficiency device for forklifts.
That's good stuff. Steve, we got a caller, man. We got somebody with a question already for Marc?
We do. We have Kevin on the line. I'm about to bring him on live. And Kevin wants to ask you about a little question about the fullback of the college game and the pro game. So, Kevin, you're live. Go ahead and tell Marc where you're calling from, and go ahead with your question.
Thanks, guys. My name is Kevin Dunnigan. I'm calling from southeastern Ohio. Great to talk to you guys. Great to talk to you, Marc. My question for you is, growing up in the early 80s, watching all those old-school Notre Dame teams that had all that talent, especially in the 90s with the fullback being such a key element of the offense, do you think with football these days, is football better with the one-back set, in your opinion, or do you think the fullback is a lost art as far as college football goes?
I was sitting a couple of years back. I went back for a Notre Dame game when Ron Powlus was still there. It was the Charlie Weiss years. He was the quarterbacks coach, and we were sitting in Ron's office on Friday before the game. I looked over at him and said, you know what, Ron, if I was I'm not sure I'd be a Division I scholarship athlete nowadays, just because, like you said, the fullback's just dying, and it breaks my heart to see that. Holtz always used to say, offense sells tickets and defense wins championships. And you've got to throw in the running game and ball control as far as that defense as well. And, the offenses now, they're exciting. They score points. But, at the end of the day, you're going to have to pick up the 4th and 1. You're going to have to pick up the 3rd and 1. You're going to have to pick up the 4th and goal and punch it in. And really, I think that was one of the downfalls of Charlie Weiss and that offense that he ran, because there were so many times that I saw them get stopped on 4th and 1, when they should have been going in and punching it in. And there's been certainly been de-emphasized, but at the same time, football is a little bit cyclical, and I think it'll eventually come back a little bit. It's never going to be again. More than likely, it's never going to be like it was in the 80s and early 90s under Holtz, but it could still come back and be an important position.
We're on live with Marc Edwards on Ask Oscar on TNNDN Network. Marc, I got to ask you, man, because I obviously enjoyed my time and blocking for you guys. What was it like, when you're in the huddle and the call came from the sideline, 60 trap, 61 trap, and you knew you had Aaron Taylor on one side, you had Tim Ruddy in the middle, you got Ryan Leahy on the other side. What was that like for you, Mark Zadovsky? What was it like for you, getting that call and knowing that, one, you were getting the ball, and two, that there was definitely going to be a hole there for you to run through? What was that like?
Back in those days, Oscar, we had a certain arrogance about us. We went into games knowing we were bigger, knowing we were better, knowing we were badder, and fully expecting to win every single game. Absolutely. And with those guys in front of you, I mean, it was like 4th and 1, 3rd and 1. This is a no-brainer.
Exactly.
That's just the way it was. And it was almost like, hey guys, we're running right here. Stop us if you can. And you know what? It didn't happen very often, because heck, even after Aaron and all those guys graduated, I mean, you had Chris Clevenger and Mike Dowdy and Rick Kaczynski and Mike Rosenthal, and you're talking guys that are 6'7", 330 across the board. Dusty Ziegler. All these guys went on and played. Most of these guys went on and played. In the National Football League. So I mean, these were, big, strong, nasty guys. And And like Kevin was saying earlier, during his question, it was back then it was we ran the heck out of the ball. We dared you to stop us, and we averaged 250 yards a game rushing.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the other interesting things when I was sitting in the office with Ron Paulus that day I was talking about a little bit ago was, the Brady Quinn senior year at Notre Dame. They put up all kinds of offensive numbers, scored points and broke records and everything else. Ron went back to our senior year, which was 1996, and compared points, compared yards, everything else. And guess what? They were comparable. They were right next to each other. But we did it running the ball. They did it throwing the ball all over the place. So when you run the ball, you eat up that clock, you control the game, you control the flow of the game, you impose their will on them instead of just dinking and dunking and throwing the ball around.
Yep. We had an X factor too, though, Mark. We had a little guy named Joe Moore. and Coach Moore, between a pack of cigarettes during practice and getting those linemen about as mean enough as to bite off of the head of a nail, they knew that anything less than their absolute best was unacceptable. And
my gosh! You know what? Being a running back, I certainly appreciate Joe Moore, and it was the dangest thing because he would abuse these guys, verbally and mentally and physically. I remember guys crabbing and. Hey, you got to go over there, hit that dang goalpost as hard as you can 20 times, and just, it was the craziest stuff. But every one of those offensive linemen loved Joe Moore. I'm sure you remember it. He always had the senior day, where all the graduating seniors that played for him, they go out on a night on the town, drinking and having a good time, and every single one of those guys. Just couldn't wait to get out with Joe Moore and get out with Joe Moore, the person, opposed to Joe Moore, the guy that's been busting my chops for 4 or 5 years here.
Absolutely. People, if you've just joined us, we're on with Marc Edwards live on TNNDN Network's Ask Oscar. Mark, I want to shift gears a little bit, man. The purpose of this show, as much as we love to reminisce, and we all have tons of great stories to share. The whole idea behind our show is to actually talk about the importance of sports. And you mentioned, in Kevin's question, he mentioned the change in the fullback position in football. I'm more interested in the overall change in the culture of sports. When I was coming along in college, there wasn't really an internet. There wasn't Facebook and Twitter and Google and all this other stuff. And ESPN was kind of starting to get a name for itself and getting its legs, and it wasn't as streamlined as it is today. Talk a little bit about what you see as having changed with the sensationalism of sports from the standpoint of even now kids in youth sports and their parents are bypassing the importance of education and bypassing the importance of teaching their kids sportsmanship and character development. Talk a little bit about that from your perspective.
The biggest thing I see is that, and this isn't only in sports, but this is school and everything else. Everything now is so much more competitive at a young age than it ever was when we were growing up. I'm sure, like you were a 2 or 3 sport athlete, maybe even 4 sport athlete.
Yeah.
All of us were. Now kids aren't. They specialize in one sport from a very early age. I'm talking 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit guilty of that as well with my daughters. I mean, they're stud little soccer players. As a matter of fact, they're coming up to the Notre Dame soccer camp this summer. They're going to plug in for them.
There you go.
So I'm excited about that. But it's unfair to the kids. They don't get to experience everything that we did. But at the same time, that's how society has changed. It's so much more competitive, and if a kid is playing soccer in the fall or football in the fall and then basketball and then baseball in the winter and spring, they're losing out to everybody who's not. And it's not only parents but it's coaches with these expectations as well. Every sport is year round now in one way or another. And kids are missing out a lot on that, and and at the same time, because it is so competitive, it's all about winning from a very, very young age, which is important. Don't get me wrong, but learning the game, learning the discipline that goes along with training for it, getting to meet the different people and experience the different people and work with the different people. I mean, all those things are aspects that are lacking to a certain degree, because it's about, hey, every parent is, hey, how am I going to get my child ahead? I mean, my oldest daughter's 13 years old, and some of these people, and she plays on an elite soccer team, their number 1 team in Florida, and they go, as a matter of fact, we play at a tournament in Chicago this summer at 13, going on 14 years old, not even high school yet. It tells you how competitive it is, but some of the parents on this team, I mean, they're already got their kids earmarked and getting scholarships for college when, when I was 13, I was just, hoping to, play an 8th grade football. And
Exactly.
And I was trying to make the varsity as a freshman.
Exactly.
Well, Mark, I don't want to jump in. I've talked about this a lot the past week with Notre Dame's recruiting class, already at 16 commits in June. And there's guys that Notre Dame have allegedly offered as freshmen in high school. I mean, how do you feel about them trying to project out 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds when they're still 13, 14, they're not growing? And how do you feel about that?
You can't do it. It's a little bit like throwing darts blindfolded. Because just because you're a great athlete at 15 years old doesn't mean maybe you've peaked out already. You're not going to get any bigger, faster, stronger. And I mean, shoot, Oscar probably tell you the same thing. We didn't get offered till our visit at Notre Dame, December of our senior year. We didn't get contacted until I think it was like middle of July. I mean, I get some letters, but you couldn't talk to anybody until the middle of July, going into your senior year. But now it just goes back to what I said a little bit ago. Everything's so much more competitive. I was just back up at Notre Dame a couple of weeks back. I actually got I think I talked about it a few weeks back, but got to participate as a guest coach in the Notre Dame fantasy camp, which was an absolute blast. But I was talking to the coaches now, and they're out, Twittering and Facebooking these kids, and and they have to spend a couple hours every single night, and some of these kids are very, very young, and they have to offer them young. The biggest challenge is for them is getting them to visit campus, because you can't pay for them to come to camp until their official visits their senior year, but kids are already making up their mind. Oscar, how can you make up your mind on a place like Notre Dame? If you're a kid in Miami and you're thinking, oh my gosh, Notre Dame's cold in winter, it's miserable, whatever. But if you get them on campus, I mean, there's a whole different feeling there.
No question.
But you can't get them on campus unless they pay for it themselves, and probably 85% of these kids can't afford to do that.
Exactly. We're on live with Marc Edwards, TNNDN Network's Ask Oscar show. Marc, it's funny, man. You were talking about how competitive things are. It's one of the things that I was the associate director of Play Like a Champion today for Notre Dame, and I used to go out and talk to coaches and parents, and we talk about the elite teams, the elite travel teams, and I know that your daughters are great soccer players. My daughter played travel ball. She was playing in U17 team. She was a goalkeeper. She actually got an offer from Auburn to play, and she decided she didn't want to play soccer, which That absolutely destroyed me. But and hey, I'll just buckle down and write the check. It is what it is. But it's just one of those things where what is elite soccer at age 9? What's elite baseball? You're talking about kids specializing at such an early age. How do you know? At 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11 years old, you may not even want to play the sport anymore.
There's a lot of kids that get burnt out. That's for darn sure, because they're living. The parents are to a certain degree living through their kids. These coaches have these ideas of grandeur. Thinking, hey, if I take this U11 team to the and win this tournament, I'm going to get a college coaching job. And it's just not the reality of it. I mean, I put up. And even in high school, I put up enormous numbers. As I started both ways as a freshman in high school. And, I led the city in rushing and was all-state and everything else as a sophomore, and so forth and so on. And at that time, I didn't know if I was going to be a Division I athlete. So probably till my junior year, then it was like, all right, am I going to be a MAC player? Am I going to be a Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan type player?
Right.
But now they got these kids earmarked at such an early age, and there's so much that can still change, from a body standpoint from these kids. They can grow a tremendous amount. The kids that are the best at 13 aren't the best at 17, 18. The kids that are best as freshmen and sophomores in high school aren't going to be necessarily the best when they're 18, 19 years old.
Right. I agree 100%.
It's so difficult, and
yeah.
It's unfair, but it is what it is right now.
I agree. Let's switch gears one last time, Mark. You got an opportunity to play for a world championship with the world champion Patriots. I'm envious of your brother. You finally got that elusive championship. Tell me what it was like. You're on the cover of Sporting News with this big grin, holding the trophy, and tell me what it was like to be in that locker room, to be on that championship team. Share with our listeners what it was like to be in the middle of all of that.
Well, as everybody in Irish Nation knows, Oscar and I should have been holding that in '93 as well, when everybody gave Bobby Bowden his Lifetime Achievement Award. But
exactly.
Not that I'm bitter about that still, but
I am.
But you know what? That 2001 season in New England was just an unbelievable experience. It was the closest thing I ever got in pros to getting back to that feeling I had at Notre Dame of camaraderie, guys hanging out and being together. Because once you get to the pros, I mean, it's a business. You're trying, they're almost constantly every year trying to replace you with somebody younger, cheaper, better. Yep. It's not, you're not part of that organization for the long haul, and you know that. Whereas, those years in Notre Dame, I was there. I was Notre Dame, and there was nothing changing about that. But that 2001 season in New England was as close to that as I ever got to feel in the pros. They brought New England was 5-11 the year before. They brought a bunch of free agents in, a bunch of guys like myself, 5, 6, 7-year guys, just going to their second contract, family guys for the most part. And, combine that with the group that they had there already, got off to a rough start, lost the first game in Cincinnati back when Cincinnati was terrible. Right. And so I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is going to be a long, hard, tough year, And, we go out the second game, then 9/11 occurred, and so we missed a week. And then the next game we lose to the Jets, and, Brady and Drew Bledsoe, the heart and soul of that team, goes down. And they're thinking, holy, this is really bad now. So, a young kid named Brady steps in. We didn't ask him to win any games for us. We go out, we win the first game. We lose down in Miami. We're 1-3. And then we just kind of go on a run. We get back to 5-5. And then all of a sudden, we win out. So we're 11-5, and so many things fell into place to be the number 2 seed that year. But, back then, Tom Brady wasn't the guy he is now. He threw for 200 yards, 1 touchdown. We ran two backs, 2 tight ends, 1 receiver was our core offense. We just ran the ball and play action. Right. And, heck, even as a pro that year, I had 50 carries, which was unheard of from a fullback in the NFL. But we go through the Snow Bowl game, the tuck rule and all that. I don't make the rules. I just play by them. But then we go into Pittsburgh, beat Pittsburgh, in Pittsburgh in the AFC Championship game, and then we go and play in the Super Bowl again. We played in the New Orleans Super Bowl on AstroTurf against the greatest show on turf. That was Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt, Kurt Warner, and all that group. And winning as huge underdogs. But it's kind of a theme we had all year was from the time Bledsoe went down, it was about the team. Our superstar's not here to win it. Everybody on this team's going to have to step up and win this game for us. Whether you're going to have to do your job, make sure you're doing it darn good, because if not, if we're not playing as a complete team, then we don't have a chance. And that's just kind of how the entire season went for us. We won close ball games. We were number 18 in the league in offense that year. We were number 15 in defense, but we were top 5 in the red zone. And we won tough, hard-fought games. We were, one of the tops in turnover margin, all that stuff. And we went out. We out-physical teams. We outsmarted teams. We outplayed teams. And after that game, we have a nice lead going in the fourth quarter. They tie it up. It looks like we're going to lose. And then we go on the magical 2-minute drive at the end of the game where we kick the field goal. The field goal sails through, and I'm running out on the field, not quite knowing how to react. I find myself in the end zone all by myself, and I turn around and go back and meet up with my teammates, and it was just a surreal experience. And then as far as being on the cover of the Sporting News, that was a complete accident. I started the game, I played the game, I had 2 carries for like 4 yards and 2 catches for like 8 yards. I didn't do anything spectacular. My tailback had about 90 yards rushing, but apparently I was just in the right place at the right time, and was holding up that trophy and said, hey, this is it's a good picture, and lo and behold, I'm on the cover of the Sporting News. So it was just an unbelievably surreal experience, and that bit of hardware that I still wear, quite often is a very, very special thing that we should have had one 93 as well.
There's no question. We're on live with Marc Edwards, TNN Network's Ask Oscar show. Marc, it's so great to hear your voice, man. I'm glad you came on, brother. It's really good to hear your voice and hear that you're doing well. Thank you for stopping by and chatting with us. If you want, you can stay on. We're going to get Kenan Tatum here on the line here in just a little bit. I know that you and Kenan were the same class, right?
Absolutely. Came in together, and he came in as a DB.
He did.
And as a fast DB, and that was kind of a theme back in those Holtz years. As far as defense goes, they bring guys in as a linebacker and then put them down in the 3-point stance and make them a defensive lineman. Jim Flanagan, Brian Young, OG. Oliver Gibson comes to mind. OG was just at that fantasy camp the other week. So I got to see OG. He looks about the same, and he's still jumping in the backfields before the snap and all that stuff. So we had fantasy campers over there, and all of us older guys, all of us coaches and whatnot, were over there kind of doing like a skelly drill with them, and they were just kind of running some plays on air. We were over on defense, and lo and behold, they did a snap count on 2, and got OG to jump in the backfield. He jumped between the guard and center, was already on the dang quarterback, but the ball was still sitting there. I'm like, times have not changed a bit. So
that's great. I tell you what, man, I remember that stuff. I was so excited when Coach Holtz moved Bryant Young down to defensive tackle from an outside linebacker. I didn't know what to do. Because when you're talking about a guy that's 6'3", 250, running 4'6", playing outside linebacker.
Oh my God, he was a beast for all those years. Wow, he was just. Guy could bench press 500 pounds, and he was in the backfield before the snap even occurred. So, But Kenan Tatum, came in as a safety or something like that, moved him to backer, and he was a force, man. He was a nasty, just tough. Everybody always asks me, who are the toughest linebackers? Who hits you the hardest, Mark? And I always tell them, it's not guys that were big, strong, fast. I played against Levon Kirk on the pros, for several times. He was, 6'2", 295. One of the easiest linebackers to block because he could get under his pads. He wasn't explosive. The toughest guys to block, those guys are about 5'11", 230 that can run. Safeties are along those lines too. 6 foot, 5'10", 220, and can run because they're explosive and it's tough to get under their pads. Tatum was a guy like that, was just physical and could really bring it. So.
Yeah, he had a reputation coming in. I mean, he had known for knocking guys out. Literally, put a couple guys out his senior year in high school. Mm-hmm. We've actually got Kenan on hold right now. What we'd like to do is we'd like to roll an audio clip. Steve, if you've got that queued up, we'd like to roll an audio clip of probably one of the biggest hits in the USC Notre Dame rivalry.
Do you want to hold off? I do not have him. He's not quite on yet.
I already know what play you're talking about.
You know what? You set it up, so we'll roll it. We might have to roll it again when
Absolutely.
He comes on.
Into the first half, I think we're up, in 1995, Notre Dame come in. We were 3-2 at the time, I want to say, or maybe 4-2, 5-2, something along those lines. USC was undefeated, came in. It was the year that USC was finally going to beat Notre Dame. We'd beaten them 10, 11 years in a row. And, Keyshawn Johnson's senior year, John Robinson comes in. It's a good game at half. I want to say we're up 14-7, something like that at the time, maybe 21-7. And they're going in to score right at the end of the first half. And, 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, I forget what it was, but
all right,
they kept flying over the top, knocked the guy out, fumble, we get the ball, and go on from there.
It was a beautiful hit. Let's cue it up, Steve.
All right.
Second and goal, 40-yard line. Washington hit fumble. The ball is loose. Notre Dame says they have it, and they do. A crushing turnover inside the 5-yard line. That is Birdberry displaying the football.
You don't see the size of the heart. You don't see the size of the emotion. You don't see how fired up Tatum is, flying over in midair, meeting the running back at the exchange point. Barnum tries to block him, but that's just heart, that's want to, and that's defense.
Think a little more on that. It was actually earlier in the game. It wasn't right before halftime. It was late first quarter, middle of the second quarter, something like that. Because we did a similar thing to them right at the end of the first half where they were going in to score and stopped them and time ran out. But that was a big play because they were going in to score to either tie it up or something right around there, and they were on the 5-yard line. Kenan does that, turnover, we're going the other direction.
I'll tell you what, Eddie, I don't know about you, man, but when I heard that crowd, I just got goosebumps, man.
Oh, gosh, you know what? It's a lot of fun, and, people always ask me, hey, what do you miss about football? I'm like, well, at least for my pro days, I always miss payday, of course. But you miss game day. You don't miss all the other stuff that goes on. You miss game day. Then when you get back to college, hey, I miss the guys in the locker room. I miss being around. I miss being in the huddle with those guys. Miss game day. Miss traveling with those guys. It's a much different feeling. Your days in college from your days playing professionally.
There's no doubt. Marc, again, thanks for stopping by, man. We appreciate having you on. It's been a kick in the head. I've got your number, brother. I'm going to stay in better contact with you. Obviously, my family's in Florida. We're just about an hour and a half outside of Jacksonville.
Good.
Next time I'm down in that area, I'll give you a ring. We'll get together and throw back some sodas and reminisce about old times.
Absolutely. That sounds good. KT, love you, man. Keep doing what you're doing there, buddy.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you too, Marc. Second time we had you on in a couple of weeks on our shows, and you're just one of our favorites. And you were open about coming back on, and we have you back. And I told you we're going to bring you back onto the season. We got to get your takes. Big, deep stable of running backs in Notre Dame. We want to hear what you have to say about them.
Absolutely.
More than they want.
I got to meet some of them the other week, along with some of those linebackers. So that was good. But Oscar, great catching up with you, man.
All right, Marc.
Definitely hit me up when you're down in FLA, my friend.
We'll do it, man. Take care
of yourself,
guys.
Marc. Take it easy. Bye.